Hey, everybody, welcome to the Contrarians. This is a special episode of continuous KISS content on the Contrarians, kids, because we needed 4Ks. This show, perhaps unwisely, I have been asked to step in as the MC for the chat. I am the biggest booster for the 80s era KISS among the Contrarian Patreons, as far as I know. So they asked me to do one of these if KISS had done a live album every 3 albums. In this case, we're doing 3.5, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. So the era that we're looking at composes Asylum, Crazy, Crazy Nights, Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, and Hot in the Shade. Now, these are often derided albums, but they were all hits. Asylum and Hot in the Shade both went gold. Crazy Nights is platinum, and Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits is double platinum. So every one of these albums was big. You know, rock bands go their whole careers without ever getting a single gold album. These were big hits. I have some statistics that I'll be quoting from time to time during the show. And with me, I have my colleagues Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation and John Clauser from My Music Corner. And we're just going to do a fantasy list of our favorite tracks from these 4 albums. Now, I was originally given the assignment of coming up with a double LP, but this would have been 1991, and that felt a little bit late to do an album for me, so I wanted to do a CD length like the actual Kiss Alive 3 eventually was. So we've chosen 18 tracks. It's 69 minutes, just perfect length for a long CD. And then if you really want to think of it as a double album in your own head, just add a drum solo and a guitar solo, and you're right at the perfect length for a 4 LP sides. Now, also, because we're talking about the early 90s, it was no longer enough to just have music. There had to have been a video product to go along with it. Now, since we don't have the budget or editing skills to put in actual video, Peter Kerr is going to be narrating some video ideas of what our project that we have chosen to call KISS 5 Alive might have looked like had it actually come out in 1991. So, gentlemen, how are you doing tonight?
Fantastic.
Doing good, Reed. Doing good, brother.
Good stuff.
I have been looking forward to this chat. And I'll save the general comments for the end. I do have some general discussion I want to do about these albums. But for now, let's go ahead and get into it. So, Peter, set the stage. What does it look like when our album opens, our concert?
Thanks, Reed. So just to start things off, I think the concert has to be in Madison Square Gardens because that's like their personal concert hall. That's, you know, where they were in the peak in the 70s, and this is where the concert is set. So full house, you know, basically they're, you know, the audience is just, you know, so excited to see KISS in their full shape and form. The lights dim. The crowd are screaming, there's anticipation, and then there's a big video screen behind the stage, and the video shows the chronological history of KISS, going back to 1973 and doing a year-by-year countdown of all the different phases of KISS, and the crowd are just going wild. So year by year, showing some clips, excerpts of different songs. And when it gets to the year in question, they come on and it's all pyrotechnics. You've got the sparklers, you've got the flares, and they start off with Detroit Rock City. But just prior to Detroit Rock City, just correcting myself, you've got the famous "You Wanted the Best."
You got the best.
Absolutely. So had to correct myself there.
So, Peter, Detroit Rock City was your selection. Tell us why you put this one on the list. And for those watching, remember, Detroit Rock City was on the Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits compilation. Now, KISS was very good about putting new material on their live album. So I wanted to keep this to as much new material as possible. but 70s tracks were fair game because of Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, which again was a double platinum album. That album was huge.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one or two songs. If you don't put on the live show, there'll be a riot in the streets. So along with Rock and Roll All Night, it's their signature song, and it's a classic opener. So originally it was on the Destroyer album of 1976. It really shows the dynamics and synergy of the band. They're all firing on all four cylinders, and it's just the classic Kiss song. Great lyrics, beautiful riffage, and I would just die to see, Paul Stanley and Bruce Kulick, that dual guitar harmony bit at, during the song. I think that would bring Kiss to the fore. It's a statement. It's the song that needs to introduce the show and just start things off on a really good, positive front. So Detroit Rock City, I think, is the perfect opener. And if they didn't put it in the song set, I think there'd be a riot.
Okay. Now, based on a comment I saw in the Patreon group, I did a little more research on Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits. I had been thinking that they were all re-recorded songs. They were not. Detroit Rock City is one of the remastered songs. And a little bit of additional research shows that most of what they remastered was the drums, because the two new studio tracks sounded so different than the old 1970s tracks. So they tried to update the drum sound. And then because of the way each producer recorded the drums, like Bob Ezrin on Destroyer, he apparently put his effects on the master tape, or on the quarter inches as they were recording each track. So you couldn't take it back out. It wasn't like it was added during, as they say, the mix down. So they could only do so much with it. So I was curious, when listening to this version on Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, did you really notice a difference to the Destroyer version?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that for them to market an album which is a mix of the old and the new, they had to put an angle in respect of the old songs to merge it. And in a way, that Greatest Hits package is a signal that there's a transition, that the band are transitioning possibly into a more rock-orientated album. So the preceding album is Crazy, Crazy Nights, which was them at their pop-tastic, Bon Jovi type of songs. And, after that sort of did its course, I think the band were looking at a more guitar, rock, harder orientated album. And I think this compilation actually flags it. So if they were doing a mixture of new and old, and the old was to remind the new audience, this is what we were in the 70s, this is our classic tracks, but just tweaking it and putting something in to make the compilation more inviting for both the old and the new punters. And by you saying that it had 2 platinum, that sort of confirms it did the trick.
It was successful. John, anything you want to add before we go on to the next track?
It's been, I honestly haven't listened to Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits in a long time. I do remember there was a noticeable difference in a lot of the sound of the songs. And I think it was definitely a different mix and stuff like that. And of course, the obvious new tracks that they threw in there, Eric singing Beth, which back in the day I wasn't really crazy about, but it was what it was, but no, I really don't have much memory from Smashes, Thrashes, to be truthful. I figured I already had all the albums. I just stuck with that.
Yeah. So. But they promoted the hell out of it. I can remember that.
Oh yeah.
In all the stores. There was sort of promos and posters and all the usual paraphernalia. Mm-hmm. Even in Australia, they were really flogging this one.
Let's see here. I actually have the stat on this album for Australia. Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits went to number 38, which is much lower than its chart position in the US, where it went to number 21.
Yeah.
All right. So the next track up is Hide Your Heart this was my selection. I wanted to start off with a song from Hot in the Shade, since Hot in the Shade was the new album. And I think Hide Your Heart is a really interesting song. Now, a lot of people will still consider it to be too poppy. It is a Paul Stanley, Bob Ezrin joint. There's a third writer whose name I have already forgotten. I'm sorry. You can look it up on Google. It'll tell you who the third writer was. I apologize to her. It was apparently considered for inclusion on Crazy Nights, but they left it off. Then Paul sold the song to Bonnie Tyler of Total Eclipse of the Heart fame, and she did the first version of it. So the Kiss song is actually considered a cover, even though it's Paul Stanley's song. And my main interest in it is that Paul didn't really write a lot of story-based songs. So in this song, you have kind of a pseudo West Side Story kind of lyric, which is just not something he typically did. So I think that gives it some interest. And then double interest is that this song was also covered by Ace Frehley on his album Trouble Walkin'. I'll leave my opinion of that completely alone. Hide Your Heart was put out as a single. It only went to number 66 in the United States, but it went to a massive 22 down under, Peter.
Well, there you go. Number 22.
So that was an Australian hit.
Yeah.
All right, let's
it was co-written by Desmond Child and Holly Knight.
Holly Knight. There you go. Sorry, Holly. I have no idea who you are.
I was about to say it had that Desmond Child feel about it. And I've always felt this song, even though stylistically it's nothing like the artist I'm about to say, but I think he was writing lyrically like a John Cougar Mellencamp or Bruce Springsteen, trying to get it working class, tell a story, and get out of the wheelhouse of Kiss a little bit more. But the song itself sounds very Bon Jovi-esque, but the lyrics are a little bit interesting because they are definitely in more of a, more of a Springsteen vein. Don't know what you guys think.
It definitely was not like a typical Kiss song. No. When you think of a Kiss song, you think of Love Gun, you think of Detroit Rock City, Rock and Roll All Night, I Was Made for Loving You. This was not any of those songs.
Yeah.
This was a totally different kind of song for Kiss.
Yeah. And it has a hey hey chorus, and everybody loves singing along to the hey hey choruses, right?
And in this era, to their detriment, maybe they were really chasing the Bon Jovi fumes, because people may forget how big Bon Jovi, love him or hate him, were. I mean, that Slippery When Wet New Jersey was just stratospherically huge. And
which is ironic because Paul introduced Bon Jovi to Desmond Child. Said, hey, maybe you should work with this guy. And then, Bon Jovi went through the stratosphere. So I don't want to spend too much time on each song. 18 tracks. We're going to be on this for a while. Let's move on to John's first selection off of the album Asylum. We have Any Way You Slice It. John, tell us why you sliced it this way.
Well, I thought, let's get Gene in on the act a little bit here. Let's bring in probably one of the stronger tracks from Asylum, at least as far as I was concerned, and especially one of the stronger Gene track songs. Which, maybe the lyrics still aren't the most Shakespearean, but it's still probably one of the better Gene songs from the album. And it's a really good. You're keeping the tempo upbeat. You're really rocking, because this is a pretty rocking song, not a slow paced song. It's pedal to the metal. So that's you want to keep that energy level going. And I think that's what this song brought to it.
Very good. I'm a huge, as people will find out as we go through this, I'm a huge booster for Bruce Kulick as the best guitar player ever in Kiss. And I love his solos, actually every solo he does on Asylum. But it's got a great solo. He's fast, but he's not just wheedly fast like Mark St. John was on Animalize. He's very melodic. His solos tell a story inside of the song. They've got memorable passages. If you can think of somebody playing notes in your mind with no lyrics associated with it, to me, that's the makings of a good solo. Also, I just realized that we've gone a couple of songs without a video update. Peter, do you have a video update for us?
Yeah, I think they'll the video behind will show excerpts from the actual video clip. There's a few pirate videos from this, and I think there'll be some excerpts behind the stage of that actual video clip. But one thing I wanted to say just very quickly about the Asylum album, I think it's the Kiss Wolf in Sheep's Clothing album. You look at it, you think fluoro, oh, it's going to be pop, but it is a really hard-hitting album. There is a little bit of pop-tastic in it, but overall, I think it's definitely the album cover is very deceiving. It's quite hard-hitting and a lot of riffage.
And I think we're going to talk kind of as we go about the production on these albums. I rather enjoy the production on Asylum, although I do admit they could have mixed it so it was a little more aggressive. Mixed may be the wrong term. People, I'm not a music professional, but they could have gotten a little more aggressive sound with the guitars and bass. I think the vocals are spot on through the whole album. In fact, some of my favorite, both Paul and Gene vocals are on Asylum. Now, next up, we've got another John selection. This time it's Crazy, Crazy Nights. Now, this song was also a single when the album Crazy Nights was issued. It did not do particularly great. Hit number 65 in the US, number 37 in Australia. You Australians love your pop music.
Well, Kylie Minogue was pretty big for a while.
Yeah. Right, so, John, tell us about Crazy, Crazy Nights.
Again, I think that opening riff is just a great opening riff. It's a great track. Again, high energy. You got that great chorus. Yeah, it's a little pop-tastic, but it's still a very strong song. Good, strong song for the crowd to sing along with, and Paul to get going on his rants and different stuff like that. I think I just thought good placement for this song, coming off the previous tour. So that's where I just thought this would be a good slot to slide that one in.
Fantastic.
And again, good energy song.
I love the album Crazy Nights. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to slag off the idea of having Crazy Nights and Hot in the Shade on a, for all intents and purposes, best of collection. But, most of that, as far as I'm concerned, when I read the comments, when I see people talking about it, what I see is people saying that isn't what I wanted from the band. People, I'm just going to say it one more time. If Kiss in the 80s had sounded like Kiss in the 70s, they would have just stopped in the 80s. They'd have never put out another album. They needed to change with the times. You may not have liked that direction, but it was a very successful direction. Again, gold, platinum, double platinum, gold. These are 4 big albums. It has one massive hit that we'll get to later and some minor hits along the way. And they weren't trying to sound like a heavy metal band. Any band with guitars in the late 80s got lumped into hair metal, which just irritates the crap out of me. But they were a hard rock band, and they were more chasing the fans of Heart and Bon Jovi than they were the fans of, Black Sabbath and AC/DC. So that said, I would have liked a little more balls from the production on Crazy Nights. It's very poppy. It is.
And it's one of their favorite themes, party. Their lyrics, I think it's like maybe an unofficial successor to Rock and Roll All Night. And I know, there's some conjecture that they always were looking for that second Rock and Roll All Night, and there may be other contenders, but I think this song is maybe a sequel. It did really well in the UK, Reed. I don't know the actual chart placing, but it went top 10. So I don't know what really propelled this particular song out of all their others, specifically to get a top 10 placing in the UK.
And in the US, it hit number 18 and number 24 in Australia. Now, we're talking about the album on that, not this particular song. The song hit apparently the top 10 in the UK. Yep. All right, let's go on to the third John song in a row, another track from Hot in the Shade. We're going to hit Little Caesar. John, tell us about Little Caesar.
Yep. This was an Eric Carr sung song. And again, we need to get it. We need to get Eric out in the spotlight. he didn't get a chance to really sing his own stuff. And this was the first time he had that opportunity. Let him shine. Let's hear this. Let's hear this song. And it is a really good track. I like the story behind it. And I think I think, it's a shame, by the time this album would come out, if it came out in 1991, unfortunately, we would lose him a few months later, which was unfortunate. But let's give Eric his moment to shine. Whether it was letting the drum tech come out and get behind the kit so Eric can get out there and stand on a soapbox or something to sing it, or if he was just singing it and playing it behind the kit, give Eric that moment to shine instead of singing Black Diamond or Beth or something along that line. Let's let him sing his song.
I like that idea, John. I like that idea. Yeah.
So I think a consistent theme with Hot in the Shade, and I was going to mention this later, but now's a good time. As we've been going through this track listing, I love all of these songs. And my only real problem with Hot in the Shade was that it was a little bloated, right? It had too many tracks. It had filler. Let's see here. Oh, the next track is mine. So, Peter, any staging updates before we move on?
Not at this stage.
Okay, so they're just still up jamming away. If anybody else saw the Hot in the Shade tour, they had this giant Sphinx behind the band. It was pretty cool. I enjoyed that tour. All right, so I'm going to one of their singles off of Crazy Nights, and that is the power ballad Reason to Live. Now, it is once again cool for everybody to turn up their noses at power ballads and say that they never liked those things. People, power ballads are awesome. Anything that you can get everybody involved in, and cigarette lighters back when those were a thing. I guess, your vaping pens probably don't light up like that. I'm not a smoker. But mobile your cell phones or whatever it is that you're holding up, that's fantastic. And Paul Stanley, he sounds great on this track. He has a fantastic voice. Like I say, the power ballads were huge. Every album or every hard rock act in the late 80s, you had to do two songs. You released a hard rock song first to establish your credibility, and then you released a power ballad so that you could get radio play. Radio was still necessary in order to sell albums. And I think it's a great song. It's got a good lyric. And again, I'm going to keep harping on this. It has this amazing Bruce Kulick solo. And in fact, it does something that they had, as far as I know, never done in another song, which is at the end of the solo, he modulates up a half step and changes the key of the song, and the song goes out a half step up from where it started. That's fantastic. I mean, it's basic musicianship, but it's a level above anything that they had tried on previous tracks, and I think it's amazing. It didn't do particularly great as a single. It only made it to 64 in the United States, made it to 34 down under, Peter.
We were propping up Kiss.
You know what? The Crazy Nights, I'm telling you, people, no matter how much people want to slag on the album, now it's a big hit. It's a big hit, people. And let's move on to, I guess I have the next song too. So my next selection was Tears Are Falling, which I say over and over again, I'm not a particularly sentimental guy, but I do love certain things from my past. And one of those is sitting in my room in a little town in Montana watching MTV and watching the song or the video for Tears Are Falling. I loved that video. I loved the flashy costumes. I loved the custom shop BC Rich guitars that Paul Stanley was playing. It's a fantastic song. And it has, once again, an amazing solo from Bruce Kulick. The man has chops. He's melodic. No, he didn't sound like a 70s player, which is ironic because now he plays for Grand Funk Railroad and he sounds exactly like a 70s player. So he can do the 70s rock thing literally as well as anybody. But in the 80s, he was an 80s style guitarist and one of the best in the business for my money.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
this was a single. No, it went to 51 in the US and number 20 down under.
And I believe, has it ranked pretty highly on the Contrarians poll?
we'll get to that at the end. But yes.
All right. Okay.
All right. Let's see here. Now we're moving on to a real surprise for me because I did not remember this song at all until Peter suggested it. But now I've grown to love it, and that is "The Streets Giveth and the Streets Taketh Away." So taketh it away, Peter.
Thank you. Well, this is probably one of my favorite songs off Hot in the Shade, and I think it's Gene at his best. So when he's pressed, he can pull one out of the bag. And when I listened to this song, I could imagine myself with headphones walking the streets of New York in the 80s, where it still had a bit of social and, a bit of decay, bit of danger. And I just love the lyrics, even though I was doing some research on this song and there was a band called Cat Mother and the All Night Newsboys, which were a band out of Greenwich Village in New York in 1967, self-titled, troubled the lower reaches of the US charts, and they had a song called Giveth and the Street Taketh Away. Anyway, I think it's a great song, and I think it's gritty, it's raw, despite the production on this album, which I have an issue with because I think there are some great songs, but the production sort of lets it down. And I think it's Gene at his best. It's direct, and it's just talking about how things, there is danger out there, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And how I would set up this Gene thing, I'd put dim lights, spotlight on Gene, and just let him do his stuff. And and the band's supporting him during the course of this song. So I think this is one where the song is the hero. You don't have to have too many bells and whistles. Focus on Gene. There's a lot of Gene in this concert, Reed, and I'm enjoying it. If I was watching it.
That's directly down to you guys, because not surprisingly, every single track I picked is a Paul song. But I also wanted to say, back in the day, I did not realize that this song, intentionally or not, I presume it's intentional, because Gene is a music fan. This is like his tribute to David Bowie. There's so much, hey, man, Suffragette City in this song. Which again, in 1990, I didn't get that at all because I wasn't a David Bowie fan. But now I'm a David Bowie fanatic, and that really jumped out at me. And I was like, man, good for you, Gene.
Yeah,
Eugene.
I agree. I thought that was a nice nod to Bowie when that album came out, and I was like, hey, I get that. Good on you, Gene. I agree. Yeah. It was a good song.
When he gets back to the basics, I think he can pull it out. No,
Gene's a rocker. Some of the things that have gone up on YouTube recently, Kiss bootlegs, where the bass is mixed way too high, really makes me go, man, Gene was a phenomenal bassist. That
He's
man
a
does
great
not get
bass
enough.
player.
Yeah, does not get enough credit as a musician. He was really good. All right, let's move on to. Oh man, we're in serious Peter territory here. Love's a Deadly Weapon. Peter, tell us about Love's a Deadly Weapon.
Right. Well, this is off the Asylum album. And again, you've got another song that if you look at the cover and you think it's going to be all pop-tastic, it's something completely different. This was first recorded when Eric Carr came into the band and was demoed. And then they went in the direction of the Elder. So they dropped it. And the version... a version of this song was actually recorded with Wendy O. Williams. So you might remember that Wendy O. Williams, or the WOW album, was produced by Gene Simmons, and Paul Stanley was involved, and some other members of Kiss. Even Vinnie Vincent, I think, had a slot on that. So this first version of this song actually came out at Wendy O. Williams. Check it out. It's quite interesting and it's raw. But I love it. I think it's heavy. The bottom end is thundering. You've got Eric Carr on the thundering double kick drums. And my view out of all the Kiss band members is I think Eric Carr's my favorite drummer. I know they're supporters of Singer and they're supporters of Peter Criss, but Eric Carr's the man for me, maybe because that's the generation that I got into Kiss. And that really, it's that thundering bottom end, and a nice little solo with Bruce Kulick. And I think it's a great song. Love's a Deadly Weapon. But
All right.
yeah, check out the Plasmatics version. It's interesting.
I had no idea. I will give that a shot. I don't have too much to say about the track. Again, anything off Asylum, if I didn't specifically say it, Asylum is bar none my favorite Kiss album. I love every track on it. So, for me, this album, their third live album could have been all Asylum tracks, and I'd have been happy. Let's see here. What are we up to now? Oh, here we go. So this is the spoiler track, another one of our 1970s tracks. Peter, this is another one of yours that I included reluctantly, but let's hear it. You have put on Strutter. Tell us about why this song makes the cut.
Yeah, well, this is voted one of Kiss's greatest riffs, greatest songs. It was off their debut. I think, they did a survey, was voted the number 2 Kiss song of all time. It was by some sort of Kiss Fanatics survey. Power vocals, bass and guitar. It's simple, it's direct, and it's one of the few co-wrotes between Simmons and Stanley. And I was watching an interesting, I think it was on the Kiss Cruise, where they were doing a Q&A, and there was actual interesting banter between both of them that they were accusing, I actually wrote that song, man. No, I did. And there was this back and forth. So even though it's a co-wrote, there's a little bit of, I don't know if it was playful banter or a bit of a sting that they're arguing who actually wrote it. Yeah. But there you go. I think it's one of the great songs on that first album. First album to me is always one of their best. The only thing that lets it down is production. And, it sounds so murky. It's like in the darkest, dingiest basement of mankind that it's been recorded. If somebody just got the tapes and, that would be fantastic to hear, but that's another story. But for this show, I think you've got to go back to the past. We haven't got too many. And I think that's it's a palate cleanser right in the middle of the show, Strutter.
Okay. I'm just going to let that pass without comment. John, you have anything you want to add before we move on?
Yeah, you got to put something from the first album. I think start from the beginning and start with Strutter. Yeah, I think that's a great middle of the set, which I think as we will go on to the second half of the show now.
And from a video perspective, in the back, quick video update, you could do all the screens and just, again, a little bit of a montage from the olden days, even go back Wicked Lester and, just remind everyone of where they came from and where they are now.
Okay. Well, our next selection is from John. John, tell us about No, No, No.
So this song you could use this as the Eric Carr, Bruce Kulick solo spot, because both of them get some great chops going in on this song. No, No, No is one of the just 4 on the floor, just like Love's a Deadly Weapon was on Asylum. Well, this one just comes right at you, and it's one of the harder, heavier tracks from Crazy Nights. Great Gene lyric. It's a co-write between Bruce, Eric, and Gene, if my memory serves me correctly. Just a straight ahead hard rocking song. Again, this could be your spot where you could do a drum solo and guitar solo for Bruce and Eric, and let them have their musical spotlight for however long you want to go.
Okay. And then I have sequenced the next song because of the idea of in our Makeup live album that we've got a drum solo here. I slotted in a song that opens with a bit of a drum solo, and that's Asylum's King of the Mountain, another John selection. So, John, King of the Mountain.
Again, great opening track on Asylum. That Eric Carr drum fill, just again, that bombastic sound on that song, and then just that great Paul lyric, and then that great riff that goes with it. Great hard rocking song, awesome opener to the album. Like Peter has said a few times, you think you're going to get a lot of fluff with all the color and from what you see on the album cover, but when you put it on, totally different story. And loves it. King of the Mountain, just a great track. I think also speaks to where, again, I think it's a good song to where Paul probably saw himself and where Kiss sees themselves. They still see themselves as a King of the Mountain kind of thing. So you guys still all these up and coming bands, you got to catch up to us. But great track from Asylum. I always loved that track.
I think that's
it's a shame that I don't think they played that much live past maybe the Asylum tour. If they did at all, I don't know.
I know they did not play it on the Hot in the Shade tour, but I agree. I think it's a fantastic album opener, and it sucked me right in. I was just like, this song's going to rock. And you don't hear a lot in the Kiss catalog that opens with drums.
Mm-mm.
So that gave it a little bit different of a kick right at the beginning. And then we're going to move on to, I believe this is another Crazy Night song. Peter, your selection of Thief in the Night.
Thief in the Night. Well, this one is another one that was covered by Wendy O. Williams. So go check it out. There you go. Thanks, JC.
On this album, actually.
Yeah. But it's a stomper of the song. It's got the great gang chorus. I love the bottom end. And I love the songs where Gene does his Gods of Thunder. And this song encapsulates Gene doing just the stomping around the stage and doing his Gods of Thunder stuff. Maybe, might even throw a little bass solo at the start before he gets into the song. Full of lights, full of color, but the spotlight's on Gene, and I love it. I love any song that he does where he just does that real sort of brings it back, makes it simple, and does that Gods of Thunder sort of persona through a rock and roll song.
Okay, works for me. I don't have any comments on that one. So we're going to move on to another song from Asylum. This one is my selection, Who Wants to Be Lonely? A song that has the distinction of being Peter's most ridiculed video. So, Peter, why did this video strike you the wrong way?
Well, this video is just so out there. So you've got the Kiss band in their full Asylum garb, which was fluoro. And then you've got, it's just sort of like almost like a Ginger Lynn video. I don't know how you could describe it. You've got these girls in S&M gear around a pool. There's a lot of spray mist. There's a lot of wet, almost T-shirt type of sort of intercuts. And then you've got Paul prancing around. It's cheesy.
Pink,
it's cheesy
and neon yellow. So everybody, you can see the picture behind Peter. That is from the Crazy Nights era. So they had added a lot of leather and studs and were generally trying to look tougher. And I think that's a result of people saying that they looked a little bit too much like Heart, and not the men in Heart. They looked like Ann and Nancy during the Asylum period.
And Gene he was quite uncomfortable with that because Gene had a bit of a film career. He was doing that movie with Tom Selleck. Runaway. And then he did a movie, Wanted Dead or Alive, with Rutger Hauer playing bad guys. And he was going down that route. But at the same time, could you imagine Hollywood playing tough bad guys or Iranian terrorists, and then he has to switch a Rooney and put on pink garb and in a way, they kind of look like more New York Dolls than the New York Dolls when you think about it. Because because those New York Dolls, they look like really bad, ugly men dressed up as women. Well,
Poison.
Unfortunately, that Asylum era was kind of very New York Dolls meets glam to the power of 10, if I can describe it such.
But nonetheless, I think it's a fantastic song. It's the same type of song as Tears Are Falling. So it's got a really emotional lyric to it. It's a very melodic song. Paul is, by a really wide stretch, the most melodic songwriter in Kiss. And that really came through on Asylum. Oh, yeah. Again, for me, on all of these albums, Bruce Kulick is the MVP. Now, he didn't write anything on Asylum that I can remember. He gets writing credits on Crazy Nights, but every solo he turns in is just beautiful.
Yeah, very tuneful, very melodic. I agree with you 100%.
So now, and as far as I know, Bruce never appeared in concert wearing a body glove tank top.
No.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, people.
Check out the video, viewers.
Bruce, if you're watching,
you won't be disappointed. You won't be disappointed.
We're just going to move on to the thematically appropriate next song. Peter, this is one of yours. It was a single that kind of died in the US. It only went to number 81, 40 in Australia, maintaining the Australians love their melodic rock tune. But that is Rise to It.
Yeah, this was the third and final single off the Hot in the Shade album. I like the lyrics. Sort of talks about a unknown musician rising to it, rising to the challenge. The video itself was quite interesting because it was the first video in a long time where you actually saw Paul and Jean in the dressing room, set back 20 years, putting makeup on and actually discussing, chewing the fat about, after a certain period of time, do we need makeup or not? Or, talking philosophically whether the music will do the talking. And I thought that was really interesting. And how I would slot this into the show is I would have, again, the video in the background, maybe complete blackness, and the crowd are going, "Ooh, what's happening here?" And put the video up and, that little sort of that sequence where they're just chatting and putting the makeup on and talking about it, and then bang, the lights are on and they go into Rise to It. I think it's a great stomper. The song, it's direct, it's got the band firing, and it's one of the strongest tracks in Hot in the Shade. It didn't do so well as a single, but that was probably maybe the sign of the times. And probably the album had done its course, and the third single was just probably a little bit of an afterthought, and that's why it didn't really trouble the charts. But I think it's a good song. Put it in.
All right. So we've got one more before what I conceive of as the two encore tracks. We're going to move to John's last selection of the night, and that is Betrayed. John, tell us about Betrayed.
So that's the song that follows Rise to It on Hot in the Shade. And excuse me. And that is a Gene stomper right there, because it's a straight 4/4 and just a heavy track. Again, probably one of the better Gene songs from this era, and probably one of the stronger songs off this album, in my opinion. Again, it's just like one of those things of, life is going to get you at some point, and at some point you're going to feel like you're betrayed by something that happens in life. It was lyrically, again, it was not like a lot of Kiss songs you were getting. It wasn't that right, straightening from the hip kind of song. This was kind of a maturing Kiss lyrically, which was, it took them 12 albums or 15 albums or whatever this was by this point to get there. But I thought this was lyrically, I thought it was a good Gene song. So got to get one more stomping Gene song in there to round out.
Yeah, I like that one, and I love the way they say the word betrayed. Way he sort of enunciates. Yes, I like it. Like it a lot.
All right. Well, now we're going to go to what would undoubtedly be the encore in the show. These last two songs are actually mine. So we're going to start off with one of Kiss's few bona fide hits, and that is the power ballad Forever. And this has not been one of their songs necessarily that has stood the test of time, although I understand that Michael Bolton still does it in concert because he has a songwriting credit. It's pretty funny if you can find YouTube footage of Paul Stanley talking about writing the song with Michael Bolton. He's like, Michael Bolton, Jack, that's my song. But what else are you going to say? It is the second highest charting song Kiss ever produced. It went to number 8 in the United States. Only Beth did better, going to number 7. So it was a huge hit. It maintains its popularity in the easy listening world, unfortunately. Again, I know it's not what people that now only think of Kiss as, a hard rock 1970s band wanted to hear, but it's a beautiful song. Paul's performance on it is amazing. The guitars on it are amazing. There's a reason that song went to number 8. It's a good song. It's a song that everybody can get behind. Even people that may think that, a song like Any Way You Slice It is a little bit too provocative, or, the guitars in Strutter maybe are a little bit primitive or whatever. Everybody could like a song like Forever. And you could not realistically do a concert in this era without including what was unquestionably one of Kiss's biggest songs ever.
Yep.
Yeah, and the song actually propelled the album. You would imagine, because the song went top 10, and that lifted the album.
Yeah.
Now, this is interestingly. Oh, go ahead, John.
I was about to say that. Think about this with Michael Bolton. There is a Kiss connection there, because he was in a band with Bruce before Michael went big.
Blackjack.
Blackjack, I believe it was called. Yes.
Yeah.
So there was that connection already there. So, to write something with Paul was probably probably a no-brainer. But yeah, I mean, just a great track. It's like Paul says on Kiss Alive 3, every time we play this song, the place lights up like a Christmas tree. Well, it's true. I mean, I'm not going to turn that on, but yeah, great track. Nice ballad, nice slower song to kind of lilt people in.
So I'm a big believer that your final song of the night, one, it should be a big hit. Realistically, it's going to be Rock and Roll All Night. But Kiss was really good about including new songs on their live albums. That's why Alive 2 is shorter than Alive 1, right? Because they cut out the songs that had been from the previous era. So we're looking at an album. We tried to keep it. I know I let 2 songs from the 70s in because of Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits. But I'm going to end it by breaking my own rule of picking songs I love and picking a song that I think is total crap. And that is, we're ending with Let's Put the X in Sex. And you might say, why am I picking the song if I don't like it? It's to remind me that, you know what? People are actually right that Kiss could be really freaking cheesy in the 1980s. I'm not going to deny it. They did some terrible music. Those costumes looked pathetic, but sometimes the music was amazing. I know the production isn't what people wanted to hear, but if you go back and listen to this set list, just listen to this set list. It's all killer, no filler. You might think, boy, I want it to be harder rocking. Well, get over that. Just listen to the songs, and there is some killer tracks here. The musicianship in Kiss was never better than with this iteration of the band. They were killing it. Going back to Ace and Peter was a massive step backwards in terms of musicianship. Both Paul and Gene wrote extensively about how difficult it was to readjust to having guys who could not play to their current standard. And okay, you know what? That's what paid the bills. Great. That's reality. I won't fight against it, but I'm telling you, this band was better. It was better in every way.
Well,
but Let's Put the X in Sex is a terrible song.
It's a terrible song. In the context of the show, what I'm proposing is that streamers come from the top of Madison Square Gardens. You've got balloons. It's like a party celebration. Maybe bring on a couple of fans. Obviously, of the opposite sex, and they're just jumping up and down and dancing, and it's like a celebration song. And then you've got all the backdrop, sort of a backdrop of this big X just going XXX and flashing lights. And this is just a real showstopper, irrespective if you like this song or not.
It definitely appeals to the lowest common denominator. By the end of the concert, maybe people will have had enough beer that they're really into it. Now, Marco wanted me to mention we did a poll on the Contrarians and asked people what their favorite tracks was, with the idea of doing kind of a pseudo single. And actually, there was a tie for number one between Tears Are Falling and Strutter. But people, I'm overriding that because the single has to be Forever. It was massively more popular than either Strutter or Tears Are Falling ever were. And it is the only possible single off of this. You can back it on the B-side with both Tears Are Falling and Strutter. And actually, I would love to hear Paul write a medley combining those two songs. I bet he could do it. Gentlemen, that's 18 tracks of Kiss content, guys. What do you think? Kiss 5 Alive. You know what? I'd have bought this in a heartbeat. I think it's fantastic.
I think it'd be a fun show, very much of the times. Don't agree with everything you say, Reed, but that's all part of the fun.
You know, let's put it this way. This is like my least favorite era of the band. But after listening through this set, heck yes, I would be buying this in a heartbeat because this was a stomping set. This was a headbanging, hard rocking set with just enough slower stuff to kind of catch your breath. But man, they just come right back at you. This was a really good set.
And we get Gene working hard for the money because Paul used to say Gene was a bit lazy in the 80s, but we're putting him out to work in this show.
We are putting a lot of Gene. I should say you guys are putting a lot of Gene in there. All right, we've got through this, and somehow we kept it under an hour. So I'm just going to say, on behalf of the Contrarians, if you like their content, please check out their Patreon. They're very engaged. They're always posting new things. The community is very engaged. They're a great group of people just to socialize with. Check out Peter and John's channels. I do not have a channel. I hope that this show generates some vigorous discussion. I hope that people also just consider for a moment putting aside your 1970s Kiss is the best Kiss prejudice and just listen to the stupid songs. Just give them a shot and maybe you'll have fun despite yourself. And that is what the late 80s were all about. So with that, we've been the Contrarians. Peter, John, thank you very much. Guys, go out and listen to some Kiss.
See you later. Bye.
Later.